Hello, everyone. So today we're going to start a really important chapter from your social science book, Gender, Religion, and Caste. And we'll begin with the very first part, the connection between gender and politics. Now, these two might sound like completely different things, but you're about to see just how connected they really are. Okay, so to get started, I want you to just think for a second. Look around you, in your own home, in your neighborhood. Do you notice that there's a kind of separation, certain work that's seen as men's work and other work that's called women's work? I'm sure you do, but the real question is, why? Is it really that simple? In our society, there's this common idea that work is split into two areas. First, you have the public sphere. This is all the work that happens outside the home, in offices, shops, factories. And traditionally, this has been seen as a man's world. And then you have the private sphere. This is everything that happens inside the home, and this is usually seen as a woman's responsibility. We see this all the time, so it just starts to feel normal.
But here is where we have to stop and ask a critical question. Is this division natural? I mean, is it really based on biology? Or is it something our society has created over time? A system that's built on social expectations and, well, stereotypes. Now, this idea actually has a name in your textbook. It's called the sexual division of labor. And all it means is it's a system where all the household work, cooking, cleaning, taking care of children and elders, is either done by the women of the family or it's their job to manage it.
And here's a really interesting point from the book. It's not that men are incapable of doing housework. Of course they can. It's just that they often think it's a woman's job. But you know what's funny? The moment you put a salary on those same jobs, men are suddenly very willing to do them. I mean, think about it. All the big professional chefs, famous tailors, many of them are men. This cartoon here really captures the whole problem in one picture. The little girl sees her mom working around the clock at home, but her mom tells people, "I don't work. I am a housewife." This is the core issue. Because household work is unpaid, it's often not even considered real work. It's invisible. So let's forget about the stereotypes for a minute and look at the actual facts. Let's look at the data. Who really puts in more hours of work in a day? The answer is, well, it might just surprise you. All right, have a look at this table. This is from an official time use survey in India. For paid work that earns an income, men work, on average, 6 hours a day. But now look at unpaid household work. Women spend a massive 5 hours a day on it, while men spend just 30 minutes. So when you add both kinds of work together, the total tells a very different story. So what's the final takeaway? It's crystal clear. On an average day, a woman in India works over 1 hour more than a man. That is a huge amount of extra labor, every single day. And yet, most of that work goes completely unrecognized. Now, I know what you might be thinking. Okay, this is interesting, but why are we discussing this in a political science class? This sounds like a personal, family issue. Well, the thing is, the personal is very, very political. See, we need to understand that politics isn't just about elections and governments. At its very core, politics is about power. Who has it and how is it used? And if that's the case, then the way power is divided inside a home, who does more work, who makes the decisions, that is absolutely a political issue. This socio-system, which gives more importance and power to men over women, has a specific name. It's called patriarchy. Simply put, it's a system where men hold the primary power in pretty much everything, from the family to the whole society. So, what are the real-life results of this patriarchal system? How does it actually lead to disadvantages and discrimination that women face every day? Let's look at some data from India to understand the consequences. Let's start with education. Look at this chart. The literacy rate for men is 76%, but for women, it's only 54%. That is a huge gap. And it's not because girls aren't smart. In fact, they often do better than boys in school. The real reason for this gap is that when a family has limited money, they often choose to spend it on their son's education, which means girls sometimes have to drop out.
This inequality carries over into jobs and the economy. You'll see far fewer women in high-paying, powerful jobs. And even when women do the exact same work as men, they are often paid less. We actually have a law against this, the Equal Remuneration Act. But the reality is that this pay gap exists in almost every field: sports, movies, factories, you name it.
Now, this patriarchal mindset also leads to one of the most serious problems in our country. In many, many places, there is a strong preference for having a son. Parents face immense pressure from society to have a male child. And this preference for sons has a devastating consequence: sex-selective abortion. This map shows India's child sex ratio. That's the number of girls for every 1,000 boys. The national average had fallen to a shocking 919. This imbalance is not natural. It's a direct result of gender discrimination that starts even before a child is born. So, with all of this as the background, let's talk about the kind of pressure and expectations society puts on women. What does society think an ideal woman should be? This poster here says it all. It shows how many different and confusing messages women get every day. The fashion world wants an ideal beauty. A company wants an ideal worker. The in-laws want an ideal bride. Society expects an ideal housewife. It's like women are expected to be all of these different things at the same time, which is just impossible. So I'll end today's class with this powerful question from your textbook. It asks you to look at all these images and think, which one of these is you? But more than that, it asks, what is your image of an ideal woman? Or better yet, what is your image of an ideal person, free from all these societal boxes? Think about that.
हेलो क्लास 10, वेलकम बैक। तो आज हम आपके सोशल साइंस के चैप्टर 3 का सेकंड पार्ट समझने जा रहे हैं, जेंडर, रिलीजन एंड कास्ट एंड पॉलिटिक्स। ये जो सोशल डिविजन्स है ना, ये हमारी पॉलिटिक्स को कैसे शेप करते हैं। चलो शुरू करते हैं एंड लेट्स फाइंड आउट।
ओके, तो शुरू करने से पहले एक बहुत ही इंपॉर्टेंट सवाल जो सीधा आपके बुक से है। अगर जातिवाद यानी कास्टिज्म और सांप्रदायिकता यानी कम्युनलिज्म ये सोसाइटी के लिए बुरे हैं, तो फिर फेमिनिज्म यानी नारीवाद एक अच्छी चीज कैसे हो सकती है? सोचो, क्योंकि एंड ऑफ द डे तीनों ही सोसाइटी को डिवाइड ही तो कर रहे हैं, राइट? तो इस सवाल को ना अपने दिमाग में रखो। हम इसका जवाब ढूंढेंगे जैसे जैसे हम आगे बढ़ेंगे।
Alright, let's start with our first case study, gender. हम इसे कह रहे हैं women demand their share, क्योंकि ये सिर्फ इक्वालिटी की बात नहीं है। ये पॉलिटिक्स में, पावर में अपनी सही जगह पाने की एक फाइट है।
और ये फाइट शुरू ही क्यों हुई? ये स्लाइड हमें इसका एक बहुत पावरफुल रीजन देता है। इस पोस्टर को देखिए, 50 मिलियन women मिसिंग इन साउथ एशिया। ये कोई छोटा मोटा नंबर नहीं है। इट्स हैपनिंग बिकॉज ऑफ वायलेंस, हरासमेंट, एक्सप्लॉयटेशन एंड डिस्क्रिमिनेशन। सिंपल सी बात है, जब आपकी आधी पॉपुलेशन ही सेफ नहीं है, तो उनके इश्यूज को पॉलिटिक्स में उठाना, उनके लिए पावर डिमांड करना जरूरी हो जाता है। तो उनकी रियलिटी क्या है पॉलिटिकल पावर में? ये नंबर देखो, लेस देन 5%। इंडिया की स्टेट असेंबलीज में यानी विधानसभाज में वुमेन रिप्रेजेंटेटिव्स का शेयर 5% से भी कम है। जस्ट थिंक अबाउट दैट फॉर अ सेकेंड। पॉपुलेशन आधी, लेकिन डिसीजन मेकिंग में हिस्सा इतना। अब जरा देखते हैं कि हम दुनिया के सामने कहाँ स्टैंड करते हैं। ये बार चार्ट देखो। इंडिया में नेशनल पार्लियामेंट में विमेन का रिप्रेजेंटेशन है 11.8% और वर्ल्ड का एवरेज क्या है? 24%। मतलब हम वर्ल्ड एवरेज से भी बहुत पीछे हैं। और फिर आती है नॉर्डिक कंट्रीज, 42.3%। यू नो द रियली क्रूशियल पॉइंट इज कि हम अफ्रीका और लैटिन अमेरिका की कई डेवलपिंग कंट्रीज से भी पीछे हैं इस मामले में।
तो इस प्रॉब्लम का सोल्यूशन क्या है? वेल, एक सबसे इफेक्टिव तरीका है टू मेक इट लीगली बाइंडिंग। मतलब कानून बना दो कि विमेन का फेयर प्रोपोर्शन होना ही चाहिए। इसी को हम कहते हैं पॉलिटिकल रिजर्वेशन। सिंपल वर्ड्स में, कानून के थ्रू पॉलिटिक्स में विमेन के लिए सीट्स फिक्स कर देना। सो इंडिया ने इस डायरेक्शन में क्या स्टेप्स लिए हैं? पहला, एक बहुत बड़ी सक्सेस लोकल लेवल पर। पंचायती राज सिस्टम में 1/3 यानी 1/3 सीट्स वुमेन के लिए रिजर्व्ड हैं। और इसका रिजल्ट, आज 10 लाख से ज्यादा इलेक्टेड वुमेन रिप्रेजेंटेटिव्स हैं हमारे पास। और अभी हाल ही में 2023 में नारी शक्ति वंदन अधिनियम पास हुआ है। इसके बाद लोकसभा और स्टेट असेंबलीज में भी 33% सीट्स वुमेन के लिए रिजर्व हो जाएंगी। इट्स अ ह्यूज स्टेप। चलिए अब आते हैं अपने सेकंड केस स्टडी पर, रिलीजन। देखो, जब धर्म पॉलिटिक्स में एंटर करता है तो एक बहुत ही डेंजरस सिचुएशन पैदा हो सकती है, जिसे हम कहते हैं कम्युनलिज्म यानी सांप्रदायिकता। लेकिन क्या पॉलिटिक्स में रिलीजन की बात करना हमेशा ही गलत है? गांधी जी ऐसा नहीं सोचते थे। उनका तो कहना था कि पॉलिटिक्स को रिलीजन से गाइड होना चाहिए। पर यहाँ एक कैच है। उनके लिए रिलीजन का मतलब हिंदू, इस्लाम या कोई पर्टिकुलर धर्म नहीं था। उनके लिए रिलीजन का मतलब था मॉरल वैल्यूज, एथिक्स, वो अच्छी बातें जो हर धर्म सिखाता है। तो फिर प्रॉब्लम आती कहाँ से है? प्रॉब्लम शुरू होती है कम्युनलिज्म से। अभी कम्युनलिज्म है क्या? ये वो बिलीफ है जिसमें लोग सोचते हैं कि रिलीजन ही सोसाइटी का सबसे इंपॉर्टेंट बेसिस है।
और कि अलग-अलग रिलीजन के लोगों के इंटरेस्ट्स ना सिर्फ अलग हैं बल्कि हमेशा एक दूसरे के खिलाफ हैं, एक कॉन्फ्लिक्ट में हैं। और ये सोच पॉलिटिक्स में कई रूप ले लेती है। ये शुरू होती है बहुत छोटी चीज़ों से, हमारे एवरीडे बिलीफ से, दूसरे रिलीजन्स के बारे में स्टेरियोटाइप से। फिर ये आगे बढ़ती है पॉलिटिकल डोमिनेंस की चाह में, जहाँ एक रिलीजियस ग्रुप दूसरों पर हावी होना चाहता है और इसके लिए सेक्रेड सिंबल्स, इमोशनल अपील और डर, इन सब का इस्तेमाल किया जाता है। और इसका सबसे भिनौना, सबसे बदसूरत रूप क्या है? द अगलीस्ट फॉर्म है कम्युनल वायलेंस। दंगे, मारकाट, मैसेकर्स। हमने इसका सबसे भयानक चेहरा पार्टीशन के वक्त देखा था। इसीलिए ये साफ है कि कम्युनलिज्म हमारे देश की यूनिटी के लिए एक बहुत बहुत बड़ा खतरा है।
तो खतरे से बचने के लिए हमारे कॉन्स्टिट्यूशन मेकर्स ने हमें एक बहुत पावरफुल शील्ड दी है, और वो है द मॉडल ऑफ अ सेक्युलर स्टेट।
देखो, हमारे सेक्युलरिज्म की जो नींव है ना, वो इन 4 मेन पिलर्स पर टिकी है। नंबर 1, इंडिया का कोई ऑफिशियल रिलीजन नहीं है। नंबर 2, हर किसी को अपना धर्म मानने की पूरी आज़ादी है। नंबर 3, धर्म के बेसिस पर कोई भेदभाव, कोई डिस्क्रिमिनेशन नहीं हो सकता। एंड नंबर 4, ये बहुत इंपॉर्टेंट है, स्टेट रिलीजियस कम्युनिटीज के अंदर इक्वालिटी लाने के लिए इंटरवीन कर सकता है, जैसे उसने अनटचेबिलिटी को बैन की। ओके, अब हम अपनी फाइनल केस स्टडी पर चलते हैं। कास्ट। ये एक ऐसी सोशल डिवीजन है जो इंडिया के लिए काफ़ी यूनिक है, और पॉलिटिक्स में ना इसके पॉजिटिव और नेगेटिव दोनों ही एस्पेक्ट्स हैं।
पहले इसको ठीक से समझ लेते हैं। कास्ट सिस्टम क्या था? ये एक हेरेडिटरी ऑक्यूपेशनल डिवीजन का एक्सट्रीम फॉर्म था। मतलब आपका काम आपके जन्म से तय होता था, और इसमें एक सोशल हायरार्की थी, ऊंच नीच थी, जिसमें कुछ ग्रुप्स को आउटकास्ट मानकर उनके साथ भेदभाव और अनटचेबिलिटी जैसी इनह्यूमन प्रैक्टिस की जाती थी।
लेकिन थैंकफुली पिछले कुछ सालों में, इनफैक्ट दशकों में, कास्ट सिस्टम में बहुत बड़े बदलाव आए हैं। इसका क्रेडिट जाता है हमारे ग्रेट सोशल रिफॉर्मर्स को, जैसे ज्योतिबा फूले, गांधी जी और B.R. अम्बेडकर। और साथ ही सोशियो इकोनॉमिक चेंजेस, जैसे अर्बनाइजेशन, लोगों का शहरों में आना, एजुकेशन का बढ़ना और इकोनॉमिक डेवलपमेंट। पर यहाँ सबसे इम्पॉर्टेंट पॉइंट ये है, इसको ध्यान से समझो। कास्ट हायरार्की के जो पुराने आइडियाज़ थे, वो भले कमज़ोर पड़ रहे हैं, पर कास्ट एज एन आइडेंटिटी, एक पहचान के तौर पर, कंटेम्प्रेरी इंडिया से गायब नहीं हुई है। आज भी ये पॉलिटिक्स में एक बहुत बड़ा फैक्टर है। तो हमने जेंडर, रिलीजन और कास्ट, तीनों सोशल डिविजन्स को पॉलिटिक्स के कॉन्टेक्स्ट में देखा। अब हम वापस आते हैं अपने ओरिजिनल सबसे पहले वाले सवाल पर। आखिर इन डिफरेंसेस पर, इन इनइक्वालिटीज पर पॉलिटिक्स में बात करना ज़रूरी ही क्यों है? Why does it matter? आप खुद सोचिए, अगर विमेन के साथ हो रहे भेदभाव को, इस अनइक्वल ट्रीटमेंट को पॉलिटिकल डोमेन में, पॉलिटिक्स के स्टेज पर नहीं उठाया जाता, तो क्या उन्हें रिजर्वेशन जैसे अधिकार कभी मिल पाते? नो वे। जब तक डिसएडवांटेज ग्रुप्स अपनी आवाज़ पॉलिटिक्स में नहीं उठाएंगे, तब तक उनके प्रॉब्लम सॉल्व नहीं होंगे। और इसीलिए एक्सप्रेसिंग सोशल डिविजन्स इन पॉलिटिक्स ये सिर्फ ज़रूरी नहीं है, इट्स एब्सोल्युटली एसेंशियल फॉर अ हेल्दी डेमोक्रेसी।
Hello and welcome. Today, we're diving into something that's at the very heart of modern India. It's this huge puzzle, right? On one hand, our constitution promises equality for everyone. But on the other, these really old ideas of religion and caste are still a massive part of our daily lives. So what happens when these things crash into our democracy? That's what we're going to unpack today. Okay, before we even get to the politics, let's start with a big, big question. You hear people say it all the time. Oh, caste is a thing of the past. But is it? Is it really just some old story from a history book, or is it something that affects people's lives right now, today? Now, we're not just going to guess here. We're going to look at the hard facts. Let's follow the data. So, where do we start our investigation? Well, with the numbers. And in India, the biggest source for numbers about our people is the census. Think about it. It's this gigantic effort that happens every 10 years to count and understand every single person in the country. It's basically the nation's official selfie, a statistical family portrait that tells us who we are. All right, so let's look at the first piece of this puzzle, religion. According to the 2011 census, you can see that Hindus make up the vast majority at almost 80%. Muslims are the largest minority at over 14%, and then you have Christians, Sikhs, and other groups. This religious mix is kind of the stage on which everything else we're going to talk about plays out. But hold on, religion is only half the story. When we add the layer of caste on top, the picture gets way more interesting. The census officially counts scheduled castes, or SCs, and scheduled tribes, STs. These are communities that have historically faced a lot of disadvantage. Then, if we add in the estimates for the other backward classes, or OBCs, look what happens. Altogether, these groups make up around 2/3 of India's population. Yeah, you heard that right, about 66%. This is super important, so keep that number in your head.
Okay, so now that we've got a handle on the basic numbers, let's do a little myth busting. There are some really powerful ideas out there that people repeat all the time. So let's test them against the facts. First on our list, this idea of a population takeover.
You've probably heard this one before. The myth goes something like this, that the Muslim population in India is growing so fast, so uncontrollably, that it's going to overtake the Hindu majority. It's a very common belief, a very powerful claim. But the big question is it true?
Well, let's look at the reality. Experts on the Sachar Committee actually studied this in detail. And what did they find? They projected that over the next 50 years, that's a long time, the Muslim share of the population might increase by just 3 to 4%. That's it. So this idea of a massive change in the country's religious balance, it's just not supported by the data. Myth bust.
All right, myth number 1 is down. Let's tackle the second big one. This is something you hear all the time, especially in big cities. Caste is history. It doesn't matter anymore.
Now, to be fair, there's some truth to that. Things have changed in a lot of ways. I mean, our Constitution made caste discrimination illegal. And when people move to cities for jobs or college, those old rigid caste rules definitely start to break down. You don't always know who you're sitting next to on the metro, right?
In these two cartoons, they just capture this whole conflict perfectly. On the left, you've got this hope for the future, right? A girl literally throwing caste into the dustbin. But then you look at the right, and you see the reality that still exists for so many. Caste is this giant monster, this shadow that looms over you from the day you're born.
So which one is it? Well, here's the hard truth. Despite all the progress, there is still a very, very strong link between a person's caste and their economic situation. It's just unavoidable.
Don't just take my word for it. Look at this data. It shows the percentage of people in different groups living below the poverty line. Now check this out. For scheduled tribes, it's almost 46%. For scheduled castes, it's about 36%. Now compare that to the Hindu upper castes, less than 12%. And for Sikh upper castes, 0. That gap is huge. This isn't about the past. This is about money in people's pockets, or the lack of it, right now.
Okay, so this strong connection between caste and money naturally leads us into politics. And that brings us to our third and final myth, the idea of the vote bank. The idea that elections are all about caste and nothing else.
This cartoon says it all, doesn't it? The vote bank of India. The idea is simple. Politicians see different caste groups as these locked boxes full of votes. All they have to do is find the right key to appeal to that one community, and boom, they've got all their votes locked in.
It's a simple way to think about elections, for sure. But is it really that simple? Is our democracy just a game of counting up who belongs to which caste?
Actually, not at all. Let's break down why that vote bank idea doesn't really hold up. First, there's no single constituency in the country where just one caste has a clear majority. So any party that wants to win has to appeal to lots of different groups. Second, think about it. Does any party get all the votes from any one community? Nope. People have their own minds. Third, you'll often see several candidates from the same caste competing against each other, which splits the vote. And finally, if it was all about caste, then the party in power should just keep winning, right? But they lose all the time. So yeah, caste is a factor, a big one even, but it's definitely not the only thing that matters.
So if the simple vote bank idea is a myth, then what is actually happening? Well, the reality is a lot more complex and, frankly, a lot more interesting. It's not just a one-way street where caste tells politics what to do. It's a two-way street. They both influence each other.
Let me show you what I mean. On one side, you have caste influencing politics. Of course, parties definitely look at the caste makeup of an area when they pick a candidate. They make appeals to caste feelings to get votes. But here's the other side of the street. Politics also changes caste. To get more power, different caste groups will team up and form coalitions. They'll even try to include smaller subcastes to become a bigger, more powerful bloc. Politics actually creates new labels that we use all the time, like backward and forward groups. So the big idea here is that politics doesn't just get filled with caste itself gets politicized.
And this whole process has good and bad outcomes. What's the positive? Well, it's huge.
It has given groups that were pushed to the margins for centuries, like Dalits and OBCs, a real voice, a real chance to get into power and make decisions. But there's a negative side too. Sometimes, this intense focus on just caste can make everyone forget about other really important issues, like poverty, or education, or corruption. And sadly, it can also create tension, and sometimes even conflict, between different groups.
So let's just quickly recap what we've seen. We busted the myth of a demographic takeover. We saw that caste, far from being history, is still deeply connected to people's economic lives. And we learned that its relationship with politics isn't simple. It's a complex two-way street. Which leaves us with this one last really important question. If we want caste to disappear, is the best way to just stop talking about it? To just stay quiet and hope it goes away? Or do we have to do the opposite? Do we have to face it head on, understand its role in our society today to have any chance of fixing the inequality it still causes? That's something for you to think about. Thanks for joining us.